Everybody, Tuesday morning, entrepreneurs across America. We were at the Dix Hills Diner, and I am with Joan Gaffney from Shift Nova Coaching, business coach. Very few people have made an encore performance, encore appearance here, and Joan, well, she's giving a speech in 2 weeks, so at an Entrepreneurs Across America meeting. So I thought this was a great opportunity to bring her back, and we're just having the most interesting conversation off camera about stories that we sometimes make up in our heads and how that influences how we approach either the day, the world, business. And Joan, good morning, welcome back, and thank you for coming. And let's start from there. You were talking about how people, we sometimes in our heads, we develop a story that may or may not be true, but it certainly influences how we proceed.
Absolutely, Peter. Yes. Good morning, and thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, I think it's really fascinating. It is amazing as you talk to people, and especially through the coach lens, you start to really probe. Like a coach is here, we're here to challenge you a little bit, but you'll notice if you've ever worked with a coach, it's about questions. It's about asking questions, and you think, well, isn't it obvious? And that's the assumption in there. Like, isn't it obvious? And when I work with people, especially around employee communication and even customer engagement, they'll say, well, this person said this. And I'll say, well, what did they say when you asked them why? Or if they did something, what did you say when you asked them why? Oh, well, they must have done X, Y, Z. And I said, well, that's your story. What did they say? And you find very frequently that they haven't asked the why. They haven't
asked the why. Okay.
Just getting curious. And that is the moment that we have an opportunity to actually see someone else's perspective, because we assume that the world is one way. I mean, this goes back to one of the all-time great business books, right, which is the Seven Habits.
Seven Habits.
Stephen Covey.
Yeah.
Brilliant book. It should just be required reading to come into business.
It should be. It should be certainly required reading in an MBA course or any business. If you're going to get a business degree in college, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah, and in that, Covey starts out talking about paradigms, and that is so important. Paradigms, mind maps. It's how you see the world, and we simply assume everyone sees what we see. But when you recognize that you are actually looking at the world through a lens, your own lens, that you've developed that's been influenced by your, whether it be your upbringing and all these experiences that you have.
Through everything that's happened in your life, that certainly have developed your lens. Absolutely.
Yes,
or your filter.
Yes, lens, filter, however you want to see it. So it means that your interpretation of something may be very different than someone else's, which also then how you're seeing things, your perspective, your interpretation creates the thought for you of what's happening, and this brings up an emotion. Okay. So and we generally have a reaction based on emotion.
As much as we hate to believe it, sometimes our emotions dictate our behavior, or almost always.
100%. Yes. So when we can stop and recognize why we're having a particular thought, or get curious about why someone else is, or first of all, what someone else is actually seeing and why they're seeing it that way, it really starts to change what's happening and in your communication and your engagement. Yeah.
It's funny, and I'm thinking back through certain instances in my own life where I've heard people ask why, and the person assumed there was some sort of ulterior motive, and the other person, oh no, it's the only one I saw. That's why I picked it up. Or, what's the famous story? The new bride was making a roast for her husband, and she cut off the end. And he asked, "Why you do that?" She said, "I don't know. My mother did it. My mother always did it." And she called up her mother. "Mom, every time you cooked a roast, you cut off the end. How come?" She said, "I don't know. Grandma always did it." And then she called Grandma. "Grandma, every time you cooked a roast, you cut off the end. Why?" And she said, "Because my pan was too small for the whole roast." You know, it wasn't, you know, it had to fit. It was just simple like that. And asking the why, that's, you know, and what do they say? You're not responsible for how you feel, but you are responsible for how you act.
Yes. So
You know.
can you, one of my coaches that I have, because as a coach, I have coaches, right?
And you'd be a hypocrite, actually.
Yes,
You know?
exactly. It is having that external perspective is so invaluable. That moment to stop you and ask why helps you to examine your own behaviors. But one of my absolute favorite coaches has a saying. She says, you choose a better feeling thought because it's making that connection between your thought that creates the emotion. So, and that
And you
emotion.
choose a better feeling thought. I always say, you know, I stole a line from a movie, a Denzel Washington line. Explain it to me like I'm a 6-year-old. So, okay, so can I choose to think more maybe positively, I guess, or or choose better?
Just different.
Okay.
Just different. So
right, different.
this is, if we can accept that this is the situation that we're facing, and this goes, right, this is where we start to see that these principles can be applied in our personal lives and our business lives, right? It's all about perspective.
Sure.
And when we look at a situation, can we look at it and just say, okay, I might not be happy about the situation, but this is what the situation is.
Okay.
Where is my opportunity here? Yes, I'm feeling bad right now because I'm interpreting this as bad. It's not the outcome or the situation that I wanted it to be. So if I can find an opportunity, now I move from problem solving to solution thinking, and I can find a better feeling thought, right? Because the opportunity presents
Okay.
positivity, right? What can I do with this? Where can I
Wait,
go
repeat
with this?
that. I like that line.
Opportunity creates positivity.
Opportunity creates positivity. I like that.
That just came out.
Okay. I sense a quote of the day.
Okay,
That's-
I like it. So when we start to see that there's more options available to us, we start changing our mind and we can find a different thought about that situation, which can create a different emotion for us that
Okay.
might be more positive.
Sure.
Right? And now we can start to respond rather than react.
Respond rather than react. Okay, and go from problem solving to solution thinking.
Yes.
Okay, and that's all your paradigm. That is all back to that. That's all your.
Because our lens is created by this ingrained thinking, right? Like that automatic behavior, the Rose story.
And I'm
right?
making a connection to Shift Nova. Okay.
Shift your perspective. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
How can you shift your perspective to start to see more opportunity in what's there?
Okay. Yeah, and it goes back to the roast where you know you thought it was one thing, and they didn't even understand it.
Right. It's just automatic thinking. That's our ingrained thinking.
Okay.
And that ingrained thinking is creating that lens, filter, that perspective of what is happening, which then creates the thought.
Okay, so improve your thought process, improve your thinking. Okay,
Expand your thought process.
expand your thought process. See, for me personally, sometimes when I hear stuff, I have to, all right, break that down for me, and I didn't get it on the first pass, or I wanted a better explanation, and thank you. That's amazing. So, and business, as one guy told me years ago, it's one problem solving episode to the next. That's just what business is. It's one of the quotes of the week was perseverance isn't a long race. It's many short races, one after the other, and that's how we persevere, and that's business. But when you have the mind solving or the problem solving mindset, it really changes everything you do. You don't look at things as problems as much as maybe opportunities.
Opportunities. Yeah, you're changing from problem solving to solution.
Solution.
And this is, a lot of times this is the freedom we get as entrepreneurs.
Sure.
Sure. It's funny, last week I mentioned this word of freedom to a fellow entrepreneur, and they chuckle and they're like, yeah, we think that there's freedom in this life, right?
Yeah.
But we do find a different challenge within it, but we get that freedom to look at things differently.
You know, I worked at one company for about a dozen years. And I thank God I was on Long Island and in New York, and I ran the New York district. The company was stationed in New Jersey. So I was outside of a lot of the political infighting that happened every day there. So that's why I personally always said why I lasted so long, because they always, every time there was a problem, they went to blame somebody. They wanted to put the finger and say, oh, he did it, you know, it's Ciccone did it, blah, 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 those guys. And it was just so negative all of the time. I made a shift to a different company, a local guy who on Long Island, and I've had my differences with the man, but John King is a legend, okay? Owned a food service distributor and had one of the largest, certainly in the area, but as a private distributor, every time there was a problem, they wanted to find a solution. They understood problems happened. It was such a welcome change of pace and just a welcome difference of how, okay, something happened. Why did it happen? And why did it happen? And it's now, don't keep making the same mistake. I think that was intoned, but let's fix the problem. Let's fix the process so that problem doesn't happen. And things do get placed in the wrong spot when there's not a proper system in place. If the system is in place and it's followed, we can alleviate that problem. And every time there was something that went wrong, their reaction was, well, let's fix the problem. Let's ask why it happened, not who did it and who do we blame.
Right.
You know, and he had a great expression. There's no such thing as a bad employee, just bad managers. Now, he didn't say don't fire people who don't deserve to be fired. He was saying it's our job to direct the ship. And if the ship is askew, that's our job to do everything right to get it back intact and get it in the right direction. And but it was always ask why, not who.
Right.
And it was such a welcome change of pace. And I always said, working there, I learned more watching him up close, because I always said about this guy, and I had my differences with him. Don't get me wrong. You and I see a pile of horse manure. He saw tomato fertilizer, and he packaged it as such, and he sold it as such, and he'd go to the horse rancher and say, listen, how much will you pay me to get rid of all that horse manure that's not doing anything in your yard? And the guy's like, oh my God, I'll pay you this. Oh, good. And then he'd take the horse manure and he'd sell it to the tomato farm and say, I'm going to give you the first bag for free. And then when you have the best tomatoes ever, you're going to come, and then he charge a healthy profit on horse manure that they paid him to remove. That's just the way his mind worked. And close, I got to watch, and working for him made me certain I wanted to have my own business, because I watched a genius.
And that opens up such a great point around when we start moving to solution thinking and just accepting that horse manure is here. What can I do with this?
Yeah.
Right? That is the spark of innovation.
Sure. You know.
And the other part of this as well is that we also ask the question, what are we learning here? So as you mentioned, when we look at something and say, okay, it's not the people, but the process isn't working. What do we need the process to do? And what are we learning? And taking that moment to say, what have we learned, or what are we learning, is so important, because then we start to see other opportunities in other areas because we've learned something.
An opportunity creates positivity. Yes. All right, I love it. Joan, thank you. It's always a pleasure. It's always a learning experience, so thank you. And I look forward to hearing you November 1st, Friday, at the Dix Hills Diner. Joan Gaffney, Shift Nova Coaching, will be the guest speaker, and we're excited. So thank you all, and thank you for watching. Please like, share, and comment. We look forward to hearing from you. Take care.